Cool. We're live. Welcome back. Another episode of Catching Up with Coach. I'm back with my special guests. We got Ryan again. First of all, Ryan, how are you?
Oh, good. Yeah, life's good. The regular season playoffs finals are over, so now it's full steam ahead onto draft season.
Yes, we are in it, and we're 6 days away. Kind of wanted to do something leading up to the draft. We were looking to have a guy from No Ceilings on, Nathan Grubel, I think his name was. Couldn't work it out, but might look to do something post draft with him. He had tweeted out about, I've never done anything with the Raptors before, Raptors podcast. And I know Ryan messaged me, said, maybe we can have
Lock
him
them up.
on.
Let's
Lock him
pounce.
up. Yeah, let's lock him
Yeah.
up. So I had to send a message to Tyler and say, Tyler, can this guy follow me on Twitter so I can message him? Because I couldn't message him. But anyway, we had a good chat, and he'll look to maybe come on after. But yeah, so we'll go tonight. We'll want to start off with, hey, Effie, good to see you. Hi, Ryan, Coach Roach, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Um, I know he's a fan of Basketball Rewind too. Good to chat with him. So Ryan, the Dan Tolzman presser, I believe it was yesterday, if I'm correct, and it's pretty typical that you're going to have the guy who's running point on the draft, which has been Dan Tolzman, at least for now, since Bobby's taken over the full GM roles. Just wondering what your thoughts were on the Dan Tolzman presser. Anything stand out to you, or was it to be expected
Yeah,
with what he said?
yeah, exactly. I think it's more the latter to be expected. I don't think there was any sort of breaking news there by any means. Par for the course. I mean, we've been hearing, I guess, all the buzzwords, if that's what you want to call it, for years now when it comes to identifying two-way players. The Raptors have an identity, and they typically have a certain style of play or personality, or the blend of offense and defense that they look for, and that they know that can fit into their system. So it wasn't really anything overly shocking. I think it was just reinforcing what Bobby Webster has spoken to in the past, in particular at the end of season presser, that that they're looking for two-way players, and that if you can't play defense for Darko, you're not really going to play. You won't see the floor. So nothing too crazy and exciting, but a couple comments that always spark a little bit of conversation. No doubt.
Yeah, Matt, good to see you. Thank you for coming in with us tonight. Yeah, I know Dan. He's been doing a lot with the draft for this team for a number of years. It's interesting because I've watched these for a number of years, these kind of things, and you get really excited. Maybe try to get some insight on who might they be looking at. And these guys deflect so much. If you told me last year they were going to draft CMB, I would have laughed because I'm like, well, we already got a CMB on our team in Scotty Barnes. And this is going to be a different conversation we're going to have later that Ryan has brought up. And I think it's a good point. It's also a fear of mine, too, but we'll get into it later. Um, but yeah, they always try to deflect. I remember last year, Noah Senge, he was a big deal. He came in, he flew in, and he had a private workout with the Raptors because he had just finished something in one of the leagues that he was in. He was in a German league, I think, last year. Um, and the Raptors get a private workout with him. Wasn't really publicly reported, but it got reported eventually. It got leaked. And then on draft night, I remember I was with some people, and there was a part of us that thought Senge's going to be the pick. Right? And then they just totally fooled us. It was CMB. Um, but yes, it is pretty typical that the GMs would say this. Now, I will ask a question about this. He mentioned in the presser about possibly looking for a rim running big.
That's right.
Yeah, what did you think of that? And if we are looking for a big in the draft, who do you like?
Yeah, again, newsflash. I mean, we've been talking about this for years now. This dates back to Siakam, right? We needed a stretch five, begging for a stretch five, bring in Pirtle, not so much, the type of skill set
Yeah,
that probably, could have benefited someone like Siakam at that point in time. And lo and behold, Siakam finds his way to Indiana, and he's able to play with someone like Miles Turner in the front court.
Yep.
who, as he's indicated on record, really opened up his game and is someone that he was hoping to play with for quite some time now. So again, not news, and it's certainly something that the Rapid fan base has been begging for, 4 years now, since ultimately the championship in 2019, when we had the two bigs in Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, who could both stretch the floor but distribute the basketball, protect the rim, and do a lot of the dirty work that the Raptors so desperately needed. So, not shocking to hear that. I think whether that comes via the draft or outside of the draft, we discussed this in our last episode, remains to be seen. But there are certainly athletes and prospects in this draft that fit that mold.
Yeah. Who do you think are some of those prospects maybe fit that mold of the rim running bigs? I get a couple I can think of, but who do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like for lob threats, again in the draft, and who I anticipate will be available at 19. I mean, Quaintance comes to mind. Having said that, he's one of still, the handful of athletes who have yet to be invited to the green room, per reports here that just broke within the
Hmm,
last
that's
couple of
interesting.
hours. Yeah, I mean, again, we touched on Christianak a little bit in the last pod about how, again, as raw as he is, he does have the potential to be a stretch big, shoot the ball, protect the rim, and do kind of what it is that they're looking for. I think Hans Steinbach, we covered him in depth last go around as well. I don't know if he's a true rim protector,
Yeah.
or even a lob threat in terms of his overall number of dunks from a big man. Might be a little bit concerning for some Raptors fans. Um, Now, someone like a Morez Johnson, I don't know if he's an ultimate lob threat, but as far as a versatile 4-5 big that can stretch the floor, has decent shot form, has shown that he can stretch it out and take those shots and make those shots. So there's a few names there, that could certainly bode well for what the Raptors want to do, when it comes to those rim running, shot blocking, stretch, 4-5s, within this draft.
Yeah. Yeah, similar to what you said, Quaintance, I think, would probably be like, oh my God, he's at 19 and he's there. And, we spoke to James Barlow a couple weeks ago, or about a week ago. He said, run to the podium if he's there. Like, you might have a souped up Robert Williams. Now you're going to think, well, Robert Williams is like, okay, good athlete, but he's hurt a lot. Unfortunately, that could be the Quayton's NBA career. I hope it's not because there's so much freaking talent there. Like the ability to rim run, the ability to be a lob threat, and the ability, quite frankly, to guard 1 through 5. Now, I don't like it as a fit. I don't like it fit next to Scotty and CMB. That worries me because who's gonna do anything outside the 3 point line when you have those three? That concerns me. But you know what? Maybe just draft the talent and figure it out, which is possible.
Well, yeah, and again, like as you mentioned, this lends into a much deeper conversation that we'll have here shortly. This might be a good segue for that. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of conversation of how clunky this roster was heading into this season. I'm not too sure how much unclunkier it could get with someone like Acquaintance, within the fold, when you have a front court of Scotty, CMB, and Jaden Quittens. Now, mind you, good luck scoring on that trio,
True.
right? And throughout the course of the season, especially early on, but really through the length of the regular season, the Raptors had a hard time rebounding the basketball. And their defensive identity is such that it really does require you to finish your defensive set by securing the rebound, so you then can get out and run and do what you do best, where your strength lies. And for many stretches of many games, they were unable to finish what was an impressive defensive set with a defensive rebound so that they can get out and get ahead of a set defense. So again, many of these prospects, they present advantages and benefits to what the Raptors have done and what they want to do. And then again, there's also some questions where it's like, okay, fit wise, how will this work?
Yeah. Will Smith in their comment. Good to see you, Will. Raptors need athletes. Tell me about it. They definitely do. They need athletes up front. Scotty's an athlete for sure. CMB's a very good athlete, even though he's like a little wider. He's got a little bit of that Charles Barkley deceiving athleticism, I find. When you look at the center position, though, it gets a little rough there. So, an athletic center, I think when you look at some of the teams like Detroit with Duran, super athlete. Um, you know, trying to think of some others as well, probably in the West, but athletes matter and you need them.
Well, yeah, and especially like the ones where you can just throw it up there and they can go get it. We haven't really had that luxury in quite some time. Like that's really not Jakob Poeltl's forte.
No,
And to your point, Colin Murray Boyle's 6'7" at best, despite the fact that he plays much larger than his listed height. But yeah, you mentioned a Rob Williams where you could just throw it up there and do with that what you will. The Jared Allens of the world, or the ones with the kind of go-go gadget arms and limbs that
yeah,
throw it up to the top
I
of the
like that.
backboard. And
That's good.
yeah, it really opens up. It would open up so much more for Scotty. Like you really can see what he's able to do when he gets downhill and dump it off or bounce pass here or there. But to be able to open up his passing abilities with potential lob threat really does open up so much more for the pick and roll game, Scotty's driving ability and opening up lanes and having to respect that and draw the defense in on the weak side for help recovery and whatnot. So it would certainly add another element to the and wrinkle to the Raptors offense.
Yeah. You mentioned something just before we went on this discussion. You said, the Raptors, we had Gasol and Ibaka. Now, Gasol and Ibaka led to a championship, having those two bigs, right? The next year, during the COVID year, had we not had the lockout, that team might have went back to the finals, even without Kawhi Leonard. They were rolling, which means they would have probably met the Lakers. Would have been a good series. Uh, there's something I never understood when we said we're going to scrap the Gasols and Ibakas. We're going to go Vision 6'9". I've never understood that. I get it in theory, having guys. If you have everyone 6'9", you're able to defend, switch. I get that, but to win a championship, you need a 7-footer or 6'11" guy, someone around that. The only team that really hasn't done that in recent memory is Golden State. But mind you, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant, and the brilliance of Draymond Green defensively certainly helps. So, do you think the Raptors think they're trying to go back to Vision 6'9" a little bit? Or do you think, no, we're good. We're going to take a step back from this. We're going to try to draft a conventional team, like put a conventional team together.
Yeah, nothing the Raptors really do is ever conventional.
True.
And I do think they really prioritize those versatile two-way wings. I mean, we see how important they are in the NBA, and that's not to diminish or minimize any of the other positions. Like we just saw the New York Knicks, and I've said this many times: elite guard play in Brunson, elite wings with OG, Mikel, and Josh Hart, combination of those three, elite big man and Cat, elite coaching, elite depth, elite fan base. You can say what you will about Knicks fans, but
Yeah.
it really does take a full collective of wings and guards and bigs, and there's no one way, in my opinion, to go about creating a roster that will ultimately lead to that success of an NBA championship. We've seen teams go big. We've seen teams go small. We've seen teams do it with defense. We've seen teams do it with offense. We've seen teams do it that who are top heavy, and then we've seen other teams do it with much more depth. So there's no one way to do it, and I'm not like the biggest fan of. I know that the NBA has a tendency to be somewhat of a copycat league,
Yeah.
but really it's who you have on your roster, the personnel that you're working with, and again how it best fits and meshes with each and every part as a whole, as a collective. If one guy goes down, do you have enough guard play, or do you have enough depth at the big man position, which we saw this past season the Raptors really didn't have much of. When Yak goes down, or if IQ goes down, like, are we relying on Shed to be our one and only ball handler playmaker, right? So it's we're seeing how the NBA has, I don't want to say evolved, but at least gone into the direction where it's a little bit more, roster at large. It's not just 7, 8 deep that we've seen in postseason play in prior years. Your ninth, 10th, sometimes 11th man really does matter in certain situations. Again, given matchups, given injuries,
Yep.
these guys matter. So trying to find value within the margins, within those role players, and having them excel and star within their role is what really elevates, the entirety of the team.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I A lot of people ripped on Nick Nurse when he got fired. I applaud this about him. He took a roster of Precious Achua and Malachi Flynn and who was Jeff Doughton Jr., who we begged beside, please, please keep this guy. I need a backup point guard. Um, he obviously he had the mishmash of Siakam, Barnes, and Ananobi. Now, obviously, these guys are talented, but when you try to fit them in an offense together, and we're going to discuss this right after this, it wasn't pretty. It was a lot of redundant skill sets. Nick Nurse did that and got them to a fifth seed in the East and took Philly to 6 games. If you had a legitimate center at that time and a somewhat decent bench, you might have won the series. It was, Scotty doesn't get hurt. Maybe there's still a chance that you win that series. So I always applaud Nurse for, he had Precious Achua guarding Joel Embiid. Precious fighting to stay in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, how does a guy 6'8" or 6'9" guard someone like an Embiid or a Jokic? Now it's going to be a Wemby or even a Duran. Like I just don't get this the 6'9" philosophy. In theory, I get it, but I just hope they don't try to go back to that. You need two-way wings. There's no doubt about that. But you're going to need a big who can be a competent basketball player at some point to win.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind here, Tim. I think again, this is a perfect segue to kind of get a little bit deeper into what we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
When it comes to roster balance and the redundancy and style of play, like as it stands, there's a handful of guys on the Raptors right now who occupy a lot of the same space. Like
Yes.
RJ likes to play bully ball, attack the rim. He's not known to stretch it out. BI operates in the mid range. Scotty, Hurdle, like the list goes on and on. So how do you evolve that offense, right? Without, again, how do you improve that top 15 offense without jeopardizing your top five offense is the challenge. And despite the fact that, Bobby Webster and Dan Tolzman now, not that I would promote any sort of drinking games, but if you were to take a shot every time they said two-way player, or defensive mind, it'd get pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
at the same time, Bobby Webster was also on the record of saying that you need to find that balance, and you can't have a full roster of Colin Murray Boyles. You do need different skill sets, to balance things out a little bit there, and so that's why it remains interesting to hear his comments and to see, whether or not we continue to lean into that defensive minded, grind it out, muck it up type of prospect, or if we do go a little bit outside of the Raptorsy type of pick selection, and going, perhaps the guard route, where many of the guards that are projected to fall within that range aren't known for being overly strong defensively. Abuka Corey aside, perhaps. So I think we're at a point where you most definitely, you want to say that we're going to draft the best player available. I understand that.
Yeah.
I think part of that definition encompasses the other components of fit, despite the fact that they may not be on record saying, you know, we need this, or if it's of these between these two players at that pick, we may lean more here because of these reasons. But I agree with that statement in that as much as I love Colin Murray Boyles, you can't have two, three, four, five players doing and providing the same thing or similar skill sets. You do have to have a little bit of variety, um, and a little bit of your offense has to be far more dynamic in how it operates. And what's best, again, this is where things get a little bit confusing in terms of how I teed this episode up. And forgive me if we're kind of getting out of order here with the Labaron
Nope.
Phylon
No, we'll get to him later.
slippage in the draft.
Happens organically. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But really, as we all of us have discussed, like it really is about what works around Scotty Barnes. So it's yes, it's what's best for the Toronto Raptors, but what is best for Scotty Barnes? Have we ever really built around him in a way that elevates his game to another level? Um, and so, does that come in the form of a rim running, lob threat, shooting big? Is that what opens up his game most? Or is it additional ball handling, shooting, playmaking that optimizes Scotty's game? And not just Scotty, like we've said this before, if you have Scotty and CMB together in the same lineup, shooting is critical. It is imperative.
Yes.
And so if they feel like they have enough of that with Emmanuel Quickly and Brandon Ingram, sure, acquaintance isn't, going to bog it down too much more, maybe. Again, when you compare him to a Jakob Poeltl, maybe the offense doesn't dip that much, but I don't know if it improves enough. And again, if you can get the defense where you're able to secure the rebound and get out and run and improve your transition offense that much more, sure, the offense overall will improve. But again, I don't know if that's where exactly they want the offense to improve or need it to improve. Sure, their transition could have been better, but really it was more so that half court offense that really stalled out on them more
Yeah.
often than not.
Oh, 100%. It was the half court offense. This team in transition is fine. Like, they have a lot of guys who can get a run. They like to grab the rebound and run to, particularly Scotty. He doesn't like to slow anything down at all, which I get. I actually get that. And I think you teach a lot of point guards to really push the pace and get some mismatches on defense. Don't let the defense get set up, is what they say. And Scotty does a pretty good job of that. There are times, though, where you have to pick and choose a little bit, right? Where maybe you should slow it down a little bit and run something just to get some kind of half court flow. But your question that you kind of asked, what's best for Barnes might not be best for the Raptors, and what's best for the Raptors may not be. What best for
Yeah,
Raptors may not be best for Barnes. I always get confused there.
yeah,
Could you elaborate? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think you mentioned a prospect earlier, Cole Pete.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, to my point, right? Like,
Yeah,
let's just say that the Toronto Raptors big board has, Koa Pete at or around. Yeah. And again, another name who's yet to be invited to the green room at the draft. One of the six or so seven notable names
yeah,
who have yet to fall within those waves of confirmation. But let's just say, so maybe be a bad example, but let's say, he's there at 19 and most of or all of those other names are off the board, or they have Koa Pete higher than another prospect who many of the fan base, is in favor of. Hey, if Koa Pete, as their BPA, okay, that's our guy, best player available. Let's take him. How does Koa Pete help Scotty Barnes? He may help the team defensively with physicality and postseason play. I think everyone's now seen just how broken his jump shot looks, or at least last look. when we saw some of his workouts and runs, um, about a month or so ago. So how much that's changed, I'm not the biggest fan of tweaking forms and jump shots at this stage of development. When you're a professional athlete, I think that gets a little wonky, a little weird, and I just never been a big fan of that. So again, let's just say someone like a Koa Pete is there, and it's like, well, the best player available, let's take him. How does someone with that skill set improve or assist or make Scotty's life easier, right? When I envision Scotty Barnes driving with force downhill, he has no trouble, using a little forearm shiver to someone and finishing at the rim above the rim.
Yeah.
But when I also envision the Toronto Raptors on their fast break and I see Scotty driving down the middle of the lane and you have your wings running wide and filling corners, and Scotty's there to kick it out to someone. I'd much rather that someone be, a Christian Anderson, a Bennett Sturts, someone who has the ability to knock down shots, as opposed to, a Koa Pete. And like that sounds like, well, yeah, no doubt, Ryan. Like I think the consensus, the majority of folks would agree with that. But that's when things just get a little bit hairy when it comes to like the verbiage of best player available,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And
I
again,
agree.
we've been proven wrong. Like I said it before, we drafted Scotty Barnes when we had Pascal Siakam. So the first reaction or thought there is like, well, Siakam is expendable. You get it's similar skill sets. Like, what are we doing here? Um, and so for that reason, yeah, like again, just the way you kind of go about wording best player available versus fit versus two ways. Like if we're strictly focusing on two-way players, like I don't know if Christian Anderson and Bennett Sturts would ever even be considered in the mix for that
No.
reason alone, right? Like you could probably identify 10 other players in that range that are more equipped under that two-way player definition than a Labaron Phylon, Christian Anderson, Bennett Sturts.
Yeah.
So it just gets a little tricky when it comes to. But again, like he's got his PR cap on. He's not going to unveil too much. He's not going to let the cat out of the bag. Keep his cards close to his chest, and it's best to kind of just say we're going to take the best player available. But how that fits in the broader definition of BPA is what I think many folks may kind of not really see so much.
Yeah. It's more word salad when you say BPA, best player available. I find it's like when I think it was Bobby in his presser. I think I mentioned this on the show how he said, "Well, we look for two-way players." I'm like, okay. So if a 20-year-old Donovan Mitchell's on the board, you're not going to take him, even though he'll get you 28 a game because his defense isn't that good. That's why I get it. They're just saying that because it's a wonderful thing to say. I just hope it's not actually the case when it comes to there's a guy on the board who might average 27 for 10 years, but we're going to pick the guy who might look like or who might resemble Michael Kidd Gilchrist because he plays a little bit of defense.
Yeah.
That's sometimes my fear. But to your point, Cole Pete, uh, I was not a fan of the Raptors draft of CMB last year. I was pretty vocal about it as well. I didn't understand it because I thought we were trying to put the right pieces around Scotty Barnes because I saw it with Siakam. They didn't do a good job at doing that. They failed him. And now Scotty's the guy. And I'm like, are you going to fail this guy too? Are we actually going to put the right pieces? Because we saw when Siakam went on a team that fit his skill set, they went to the NBA Finals, and Halliburton doesn't get hurt, they might win the championship. We saw OG Anunoby just now, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. He's on a team with a stretch big and a guard who can be ball dominant and take big shots in big games. And they won the NBA championship. He's on a team that fits his skill set. So with Scotty, are we going to make a team? Because I view this in two ways. One, Scotty's the man, and yes, there comes a point where you just got to take your team to the next level as the guy, but you also got to have the right pieces around him too. I thought in the playoffs he became the guy for me then, right? He was pretty good throughout the regular season, all star. Second half numbers weren't good, but the playoffs he was the best player in that series, and I needed to see that. I'm like, okay, now they've seen it. What are we going to do about the pieces around him? Because you're right, they matter.
Well, yeah,
You have to try to get this right. You can't have, you run your offense to get a shot in the corner and there's CMB with the ball. That's not going to work. We saw that actually in the series against Cleveland.
yeah. We saw Scotty, parked in the corner. Mind you, it was only for minimal stretches during the tail end of the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, again, I've even compared the Raptors to someone like the San Antonio Spurs in the sense that, like, let's take the roster for example. Like, we're already discussing how does De'Aaron Fox fit in here now,
Yeah,
where you've got Dylan Harper not parked on the pine, but he's a star in the making, and he needs the ball in his hands. He needs as much usage and run as he could possibly get. But are the San Antonio Spurs now, with basically a three-headed point guard monster, if you will? Do you think that if they have the best player available on their board at 20, they're leaning towards another point guard where they already have three point guards, and they're trying to find, how to make that work? Like, that's kind of what I mean by best player available versus fit, right?
yeah,
Like, it does get a little bit more complicated than simply relying on, hey, best player available. You do need roster balance. You do need proper roster construction. Um, and so, yeah, that's where it gets. And we've touched on this. Like, there's only so many unicorns that you can identify that can pass, dribble, shoot, defend, rebound, block shots, do all these things, right? Whether it's in guard form, wing, via the wing or the big. Like, Cameron Carr can do a lot of these things for the Raptors. He can shoot, he can defend, he can do some stuff with the ball in his hands. He can block shots. He's not a rim protector. He's not a big man, but don't get me wrong here. But again, it depends on what they prioritize, who's available, and in my opinion, how it does fit with Scotty more so than anyone. Because yes, despite the fact that Dan Tolzman said, look, our roster could look like anything, in a month or 2 months or 6 months out from now. So to try to draft someone to fit a roster that may not look like it does, totally get it. But Scotty
yeah,
Barnes is not going anywhere. He's certainly one of those players and pieces on this team where he may not be on the way out anytime soon. So again, like, it makes sense what he says to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, if Scotty is in fact your guy, which every sign has pointed to now, especially with this postseason run, okay, how do we maximize his talent? And then as a 1B or a number two option, and I know RJ and BI are on this team, but really Colin Murray Boyles is as much part of this future as Scotty Barnes is as of today.
yep, yeah. And look, it's different if you hit pick two. You have to pick whoever that guy is at pick two. If it's if Darren Peterson is on the board at pick two, like you just go for, you have to pick him, right? Pick 19 is a little different than pick two. Like, I think
I would agree. Yeah.
your goal for pick 19, in my opinion, is a rotation piece. If you find a gem at 19, that's fantastic. It doesn't happen very much. It's an admiration.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, if you can find someone like an AJ Mitchell, that name's been brought up here
Yep.
recently, and where he was ultimately selected in the draft, but contributing in a much more valuable way for OKC. So again, a lot of it really does depend on where these players fall to what team, to the system, their developmental track record, their medical staff. All of this comes into play. Um, but yeah, when you look at where the Raptors struggled most, and there are a number of areas, like, you could go across the board and say, yeah, we need guard play, we need 3-point shooting, we need better wing depth, more wing depth, we need more bigs, better rebounding, shot block. There's a lot of things the Raptors do need, and we
Yeah.
touched on this in the last episode. How much of that is addressed via the draft and via outside of the draft.
Yeah. And Evie made a good point. Brooklyn picked 5 point guards last year and are likely pick another point guard. You know who did this one year? I remember they had 2 top 10 picks, and they didn't get Steph Curry. It was Minnesota. They
Minnesota
took Ricky
Timberwolves.
Rubio and they took
Yes, sir.
Johnny Flynn,
Yes, sir.
and
Yeah,
they
it's
could
like
have
having
took.
it's like the NFL quarterback thing, right? When you have two quarterbacks, you really don't have a quarterback. You
Yeah,
don't have that guy. You've got a couple good options or decent options, but you don't have that true elite 1A option.
yeah, they could have picked Steph Curry and DeMar DeRozan. That's what Minnesota could have done, right? And they went, oh, I can't remember the GM was at the time. He wasn't very good, but picked Rubio and he picked Johnny Flynn. Ricky Rubio, I understood because at the time he just came off the Olympics. Like, man, that guy is good. People were like, why are you picking Johnny Flynn now? And that doesn't make any sense.
A
And I
lot of
think
head scratchers, yeah.
I think they had Kevin Love too at the time. So they didn't really do a good. Kevin Love's numbers back in the 2000s was big time for
Well, we're seeing the
people.
Cameron Boozer comps there. Like when you see the
Yeah,
player comps, like Kevin Love is a name that often comes up, and a lot of the young bucks these days they see Kevin Love, and he's on the end of the bench in Utah,
yeah,
known more for his quotes post game or than his play nowadays. But Kevin Love was that dude in Minnesota, and certainly what he was able to contribute in Cleveland and elsewhere.
yeah.
Um,
No, he was good for a while, but
it is, it's interesting looking back in hindsight. It's easy to judge a team like Minnesota saying like, what were you thinking going this way, and as opposed to that way, and there's so many of those cases. Like I'm sure I'm going to look like, a fool here if Benestert slides to 26 and he ends up not being what I've pegged him out to be. And that's fine, right? Sometimes we hit and sometimes we miss. But lucky for us, we're not the general manager of a franchise who have to make these decisions.
that is true. I was very high on Cedric Coward last year, but it took me about almost till draft day to figure it out. Like this should be the guy. I just thought, get ninth pick. The guy has great shot form, long wingspan, good athlete. Didn't play at the best school. Who cares? This guy's game is suited for the NBA. And then when Memphis drafted him, he had that big start the first half of the year. I'm like, man, it's good to be kind of right, but then he kind of fell off there a little bit in the second half. I do think he's going to be a good player. I do understand, like, okay, the Raptors took the guy I think with the highest floor with CMB, and I get that. The ceiling, we'll see how that's going to depend on him, quite honestly. But this discussion with drafting best player available and then drafting for team philosophy is an interesting too. Like the Raptors like those switchable wings who can play defense, but they're gotta. You're right. There has to be a point where you start actually building around your guy. You can't go with Koa Pete and say, "Oh yeah, we're going to throw Scotty, Koa Pete, and CMB. Go." And oh, by the way, Jonathan Mobo too. So we got 4 Scotty Barnes on the team. And I'm just like,
You can and see how that works out for you. I'm not a fortune teller, but I could probably guess that it might not work out all that well.
yeah.
Um, and again, you don't want liabilities on either end, right?
Hmm.
But outside of even just the basketball, like on court stuff, like we've seen how well these Toronto Raptors get along with one another.
Yep.
And that's part of the reset of the culture here recently, like post Fred Van Vliet and post Nick Nurse and Siakam and OG, and really kind of resetting or retooling or rebuilding, you know, where they want to eventually, get to. Um, and so that matters, right? Like how do these prospects fit in from a personality standpoint, from a camaraderie standpoint, just general interests. I mean, I know that doesn't matter as much as can you shoot, score, pass, dribble, all that good stuff. Um, but it does matter, and I think this team really got along very well. And I think a lot of their off-court cohesion we saw trickle onto the court.
Yeah. Get your thoughts, Ryan, on Dalen Swain, and I'll give mine. He's there at 19.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of thoughts on Swain. I do see some similarities with RJ Barrett, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
So I wouldn't necessarily be overly shocked again, depending on the direction in which we take with RJ. Swain does have, some of that cutting ability, the presence to move off the ball, cut off ball, attack the rim, uses his physical kind of two-way skill set to be productive. Um, and so that's probably as much as I have to say on Swain. I'm not as high on him as I am some of the other prospects in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if it was up to me and it was pick one, Carr or Swain, like it's a no brainer for me. I'm going Cameron Carr all the way. But as far as like another shooting guard, small forward option, he's certainly in the mix.
Yeah. He's grown on me in the last couple of weeks because at about a month ago, I was watching him play. I was watching some of his film. I'm like, the hitch in the shot is rough. And
Yeah,
that was a
yeah,
bother for me. I don't, I know some guys can make a great career with a hit bad shooting form, Sean Marion being one. Uh, but Lonzo, Lonzo eventually had to fix the form. LaMelo's form even is not great. It's kind of like it's like he sometimes it's like a 12-year-old trying to shoot the basketball, and he just kind of
yeah,
kept that form, but he made it work
yeah,
for him.
right. Yeah.
But with Swain, I like his handle. I like his cutting ability. The athleticism is good. He's pretty good at the rim too. He's
Yeah.
a very Raptorsy type prospect,
Yep, he is. Yep.
and he shot about 30, almost 35% from three last year. It wasn't on very low volume, like three shots per game. I have a feeling if he's on the board at 19, I think he might be their guy. That's just me. When I've spoken to a couple of guys, I think it was Tyler and James actually, um, they have Swain pretty high. Like they like him at top 15, top 16. They just think the stuff that's there is very transferable to the NBA. I can see that. I've just seen so much bad shooting over the last few years of this team. I'm just kind of turned off when I see guys with a hitch in their shot. But if he fixes that, I'm game for him.
Well, and again, it goes to what we just discussed. I mean, if I have the option to choose from either a point guard or combo guard or a big man as opposed to another wing,
Mhm.
when as currently constructed, we have RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes. You throw Jacoby Walter in there. Where does Swain really kind of fit into that? Sure, he's going to get minutes as any one of the 19 overall picks will get. But when it comes to prioritizing really what this team needs, that's where, for me personally, Swain might fall a little bit down my big board in comparison to some of the other guards and bigs as we've discussed.
You know what Swain does for me a little bit? He doesn't rock the boat. He seems safe to me. Because if you're going to get rid of Grady Dick this year, okay, Swain could possibly, potentially step in
Yeah,
for some of those minutes, right? If you really believe that Jacoby's a pretty good shooter. And look, Jacoby and Swain on defense, Swain, I think, has got better handles. That actually could work. I can see it. And Swain, he's almost 6'8" in shoes. I think he measured out at 6'6.5" barefoot. So let's just call him 6'7.5" in shoes. Let's get decent size. Uh, I've always gotten the impression that Bobby's staff, they like guys that they have a lot of information on. He's a junior in college in Texas, and he played 2 years at Xavier, so they get plenty of information on him. But with Swain, I find he's a little safe. Now, I'll give you an example. We draft your guy Bennett Sturts. You're rocking the boat on that because you've already got Quickly and Shed. Okay.
mhm.
Same thing if you draft Bakori, you're rocking the boat. Trying to think of someone else. I won't say Merez. Cam Carr. You're maybe only because Carr's upside and his two-way ability is pretty high. You might be like RJ Barry, like, oh, I don't know what's going on now. But to me, I feel like okay, if we draft Swain, he gets Grady minutes. Everybody kind of stays the same a little bit. That's kind of the way that I view it. But the point guards, that's a different discussion. You rock the boat. You even get Labaron, which we'll get into in a bit. You rock the boat.
Yeah, and another name here I see in the chat is Alan Graves. And again, if you were to ask me, who would you rather, which player would you prefer between these two? I would lean towards Graves. I know he's a little bit slow-mo and looks like he's, playing in molasses on occasion. He does play at his own pace. Molasses was a common nickname that I had growing up, by the way.
Oh,
Slick
I
and
love that.
thick and
It's a
slow.
bear timer.
Uh,
I love that. That's great.
yeah, but yeah, I would have Graves higher on my board than Swain, and that's just me. And again, this is not to say I don't like Swain. It's just if I had a preference of the two, I think Alan Graves would serve us a little bit better. And again, I don't. That's not to say that I have Graves higher than some of the other names we mentioned, but between those two options there, I would lean towards Alan Graves. I think his IQ and the way he plays the game, albeit at a slower pace. Um, Again, not a sexy pick, right? Pretty. I don't want to say it's safe, but again, going back to what Tolzman and Bobby have been repeating, the two-way play, he does present that, and he's very much an analytics darling. So I could see that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind Graves. Look, there's only one guy in this draft I don't want. That's Copete. Graves, I do like. He can shoot the ball. I think you're right in terms of how he sees the game and like high IQ. I think he came off the bench for Santa Clara for most of the year.
I mean, Scotty Barnes came off the bench. Like
Which
this,
is
that's the
true.
that's the thing
Yeah.
with the Raptors. I mean,
Yep.
you could be a starter, you could be a sixth man, you could be a point forward. It really, I don't think I mean, there is a certain mold that they look for and identify. But like even right now, we're talking like, what is Scotty Barnes? Like, what is he? Is he a three? Is he a four? Is he a point guard? Is he like?
Yeah.
There's still that conversation. So it's
After
not
5 years,
like,
we're still having that conversation, which is kind
yeah,
of fun. I
and
get
again,
it. Yeah.
that's where the game has evolved to. Like I know it's
Yeah.
positionless basketball, but again, and I've said this, I've been very vocal on the record. Having a true point guard is a necessity as opposed to, in my opinion, these combo guards where you're asking them to make very critical decisions, very critical moments of games, and they may just lack that wherewithal to make the right simple play.
Yeah. No, I find if I look at Graves, I'm not comparing him, but I think there might be similar games to Mamu. Now, Mamu's going to be quicker moving up and down the court when he really takes off. Graves is a little slower, but I think the defense is going to be better than Mamu. Like if we selected Graves, Mamu might be out the door.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think.
Mama might be out the door already, to be honest. But sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
finish
no, no.
your
I was
thought.
just like, I think if you draft a guy like Graves, you got to give him some playing time. That's for sure. At some point, I don't think you'd want to just unless just bring him along slowly because looking at some of his numbers per 36 minutes, like that's 18, 19 points, 10 rebounds, a block and a half, and he only played. I'd have to look up how many minutes specifically he played this year. He only played 22 minutes.
Yeah, but that's kind of where we're at with this team. Like we're not looking for someone to, hey, we need you to have the ball in your hands.
Yep.
And so I think he's shown that he can contribute to winning and be
Yep.
effective and efficient in the minutes in which he's allotted and
Yeah.
afforded. Now again, I look at Graves and I say, okay, could I envision Graves and Scotty and CMB playing together? Like that looks a little clunky, in my opinion. Sure, you've got some versatile defenders and some very high IQ players. I just don't think it's the most ideal fit, but depending on how you run your lineups and whatnot, there's ways to get around that, I'm sure.
I think if I was looking to pick a team to fit with those three, he would be one of them, along with Steinbach, to actually fit with Scotty and CMB because he has good shot form. He can stretch the defense. Um, some of the numbers they're good analytically. I guess the only thing that a little concerns me, the speed, his movements. He seems a little slow, but you know, can you hide that on defense? Scotty and CMB, you certainly can. It's the same thing with Steinbach. You can hide some of that, and I think that's what kind of James Barlow pointed out. He said Graves is, what did he say? He, he's a power forward in like a center's body. I think that's
There you go.
what he said on the
Yeah.
show, and
Yeah.
I think he's kind of right on that because he is like 6'9", and when you watch some of the film and you have him as like your trailer big, and you dump it off to him, that's not bad. Like there's, I think Brett Siegel tweeted out today how maybe the Raptors have some
Yep.
interest in him,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
you know what? If they're going to lose Mamu, I see it.
I could too. But again, like I don't know if you're going to lose Mamu as a stretch big,
Yeah.
do you have to replace that skill set with someone similar in which you hope to acquire more shooting? And then again, we talk about the rim running, shot blocking, rim protector. Graves is certainly not that,
No.
right?
Well,
So where does he fit into the overall construction as a whole? And I that's not to say he doesn't. I think again, as a very smart basketball player, problem solver, um, we could use that. We could use as much of that. I wouldn't really label the Toronto Raptors one of the smartest basketball teams in the NBA.
mhm.
And I've been on the record saying this many a times. Of when it comes to playing and executing Darko's point five basketball, you really need players to make very quick decisions. On the fly, live in real time. 1 second is too long. And so to have as many of those players as possible playing with one another is really where you can create advantages and take advantage of said basketball IQ.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see as I watch more on Graves offensively. I think he can fit in. Uh, he averaged a block a game in 22 minutes a night. That's not bad. Yeah, again, if we select him, I'm not upset on draft night.
Yeah.
Oh, again, it's only one guy that I don't want. I don't get it. But I think Graves is going to be a guy. He's going to be in that range. Like it's not going to shock me if he goes higher than 19. Won't shock me if he goes lower than 19. But speaking of going higher or going lower,
Here we go.
this is a good transition into uh, not the man of the night, but one of the men of the night, I guess, is Labaron Philon. Now, certainly Kenyon, host of Basketball Rewind, that's his guy in this draft. He like you like Sturts, he likes LeBaron.
Yeah.
He likes him. I like him too. I don't know he's my guy, but I like him. Uh, many mocks have had him slipping to us, which is interesting because if you told me that a month ago, I wouldn't have believed that. LeBaron might go top 10. Like he's pretty good. Why do you think there's a slip in his stock?
It's a great question. And I found myself asking that very question on several occasions even today. Like what's going on here? Do I even believe, some of the smoke that's coming out and that there's a chance he could slip and be available at 19? Like I have a hard time, an awful hard time believing that.
Yeah,
And some of what I do read on perhaps why that may be the case is more so related to his slight frame and how he's pretty small guard as far as like weight goes. And the concern there is that, he really didn't put on that much weight or bulk up from last season into this season. And we've seen, or at least heard Bennett Sturts, mention on a couple of occasions now how he's already been able to put on 8 pounds of muscle, in a matter of a month or two. And Phylon hasn't been able to do that in a couple of years. Now, can he? Sure, probably, maybe. I don't know. He hasn't shown that he can, but that's not to say that he can't. But I do find it surprising that, if in fact that is the reason why he slipped here as of late, I just find that very mind-boggling. I mean, nothing's changed. He was slight frame 2 years ago. He was slight frame this past year. He's been slight frame this whole while. Unless he's getting torched in workouts, he's getting lit up, or some of these scouts and general managers and coaching staff, they see him live in person, and it's like, oh wow, maybe you're a lot, small, like up close and personal, like you're a lot smaller than we thought, or that you looked like, or you played like. Like, it really is a head scratcher for me as to why he would be available at 19. And I totally get that other prospects may be rising and increasing their stock in the draft, right? And because of that, it's just the nature of someone has to slip, someone has to fall. And if that's Phylon, many Raptors fans would be ecstatic, myself included.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I know Sturts is your guy, and I would say Johnson is my guy. But look, Phylon falls, he'd be my guy then.
Oh, listen, I would absolutely love to have, like, just for the record, right? For any of the Phylon fan club out there, like, you'd be getting no complaints from me. Trust me. I just want to make that perfectly clear. I've heard some, analysts and scouts compare Abuka Corey and others to the likes of Kyrie Irving. But when I see LeBaron Phylon, I see more Kyrie in his game than I do some of the other prospects. He's just a bucket. He's a walking bucket, right? And people use the term, I've heard, he's got a bag. Like, he really does. Like, you watch him play, you see him put up like 30 on Michigan. It's like, oh my, like, what really can't this kid do? He's just got a knack for scoring the basketball. Um, and I do wonder, not that he can't, he's shown the ability. I do wonder how well he can play off the ball.
Yeah.
In that system, we talked about, like, I certainly believe that Sturts has the ability to play off ball, catch and shoot. Um, Probably a little bit better than Phylon in that one and only regard. But
Mhm.
make no mistake about it, if we're talking about LeBaron Phylon, Bennett Sturts, Christian Anderson, Abuka Corey, Phylon's at the top of that list as far as guard play goes. And he's someone that you can legitimately say, like, look, we may very well have the point guard, of our future here. So yeah, I've heard it. Number of prospects run to the podium. He's one of those guys that, no brainer if he's available, and the likes of Morez Johnson's off the board, and Cameron Carr's off the board, and if Phylon's sitting there at 19, I could see him easily fitting in very well to what this team is trying to do on court, and, as I mentioned, off court, fitting in with the personalities and the young bucks on this team. Like, I think it would be a perfect marriage, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. I always liked you made a good point about Michigan. I think he scored 35 in that game and scored 35 against Arkansas, by the way. So I'm always looking at the player like, what did you do against the good teams during the year? He had 25 against St. John's back in November. He had 24 against Illinois. I think they were Final Four team or Elite 8 team.
They're tough.
He
Yeah.
had 29 against Clemson. He had 24 again against Arizona, 24 and 10 rebounds, by the way. 17 against Kentucky, 32 against Mississippi State, 26 against Tennessee, 35 against Arkansas, 23 against Tennessee. I mean, this guy is a bucket.
He's a
He,
walking
he
bucket. He can score in his sleep.
yeah. And I think what might be the Raptors again, like they have lots of information on players. LeBaron put 2 years into the college basketball. I think they're like, okay, we can be sure now that maybe this guy is a dude. It's like CMB sophomore,
Mhm.
Koloko at the time he was a junior, so they like to typically look for guys who've played a couple of years of college basketball, unless someone falls to them. Who's OG, another example. He played 2 years and they drafted him, but I don't get the narrative around Feinlon slipping down to like our pick. Like, I'd be pretty disappointed if he was there. We didn't select him. I'd be real disappointed. How could you
I'd
pass
be
up on
shocked.
this guy?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would
But
be. I mean, and again, like we talk about the skill sets of the Christian Andersons of the world, that like instantly you can see how he fits with the Scotty Barnes.
yep,
Um, but my goodness, I just the handle, the footwork, just the ability to get to his spots. Um, he's scary good. So I do not blame anyone for having LeBaron Philon at the top of their list, especially at their guard list. Make no mistake about it. I'd be ecstatic if he fell to the Raptors at 19 alongside the Morris Johnson Juniors and the Cameron Cars. I just don't see that being a possibility. I hope to God I'm wrong. And we're all celebrating ecstatically, when he puts that Raptors cap on. So fingers and toes crossed. We'll see.
yeah. Well, I'm just looking at some of his per 36 numbers as compared to some of the guards in this draft, and I mean a Cuff and Flemings and Mikel Brown Jr. Philon leads them in scoring per 36 minutes, around 26 per game. He leads them in field goal percentage. It was like 50% for the year. Um, PER, he had the highest PER of all the guards, even more than the Cuff. So, I mean, this is a guy. He's an elite guard, and he produces
Oh, yeah.
big time. Especially when you get a Darius Cuff Jr. had the ball in his hands a lot this year. Actually, he's going to have a higher player efficiency rating. Um, Philon was on a pretty good Alabama team with Amari Allen, and there's the big kid. I can't think of his name. But yeah, I don't get the slippage. I know there's lots of guards in this draft. Maybe lots of teams have point guards already on their team for sure. I mean, you got a Cuff and you got Brown Jr., you got Flemings, you got a Corey, you got Sturts, Philon, Anderson. Like you got after those first three that I mentioned, I guess you're looking at Philon,
Well, if
Sturts,
Philon's
Corey.
available at 19, that means a Christian Anderson or a Buka Corey got drafted ahead of him, right? Like 16
Yeah,
at Memphis. Like someone's taking a guard, and even prior to that pick. So if he's available at 19, that means that one of those guards likely would have been drafted ahead of him, which I question. But would be more than happy to have Philon land in our lap at 19. Similar to Jacoby Walter. Like no one really saw him slipping to 19, and we
yeah,
made the most of that pick at that selection. And so hopefully we see a repeat performance of having someone fall and scooping them up.
yeah. I know we're probably at our time for the show, a little over an hour, which is great. Had a great show. Thank you all for joining as well. I see the comments. I'd like to get to them. We're gonna get out of here for now. Uh, Ryan and I are also we're an hour ahead than you guys as well in the time zone. So, but no, this has been a great show. Talking more about the draft, talking about how it fits with Scotty, if it's the right moves to put around Scotty, or do you just draft guys who are just like him? I don't do that. I don't think you can win a championship with five Scotty Pippins on your team. I think you need a Jordan in there once in a while, Uh, but no, it's been a great show. Stay tuned, people, for more draft content and particularly post draft content. If we're able to go, and we'll see. Hopefully, we'll probably see each other draft time next week. We'll see how this goes.
No doubt. Thanks
All
for having
right.
me once again, Tim. Appreciate you,
Th-
my man.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care and take care, everybody. Thank you, Effie and Matt and Will for coming to watch, and anyone else who might be watching this show. It's great to see some of the people who have been watching. Take care, everybody.